when I was setting up what I wanted is a very simple, colorful background for a character, and I set that up, and I thought of it as a rather simple thing, but then I added a little thing here and added a little thing there, and after a while I realized I had something somewhat complicated, so I thought I'd go over it here. What the effect we're looking for is that just the background is kind of an interesting color, and I should be able to sort of change the style of the background, say maybe night or peach colored or pink colored, etc. Right? I'm going to pick, let's call this day, aqua day here. I'm going to stick with that for the rest of this video here. So what these are is just vertex colors on this background. And what the background is a giant rounded cube, right? So I made a cube and subdivided it, and then I smoothed it out a bit so it's round. Then I flattened out the bottom part there so that there's a flat floor for her to stand on. And also with the subdivision, I took each part of the subdivision and beveled it a little bit so that there's a floor, or tiles on the floor there. But that's not terribly important. That's just something I wanted to add to make it a bit better. You wouldn't have to do that yourself. I have the tiling going all around the background. If you look carefully here, you can see that tiling goes all the way up and around this thing. The other thing is that has backface culling, so, and the normals are pointing inward, so when you come outside of it, you can still see through it to the inside. And then also, if you went into an orthographic view like that, you can still see your character because the backface culling keeps it from blocking her out. Let's see, another aspect of this is I do have an empty sitting here in the middle of the sphere, and if I rotate this empty around, that'll actually cause that reflection to go into different places. And I can key that empty, so let's say if I come to here and I don't like the way the reflection is going right behind her head, I could move it a little bit, say down to here, and then I can key the location of that, or key the rotation of that empty down here, and then it'll be like this from then on. So there's a couple of tricks that make all that happen. Let's take a look at the shading tab where the material is. So I've got the empty highlighted. Let's highlight again the background here. Just the background. Actually, I'm going to highlight her and get her in the center again. There we go. Now I'm highlighting that background again. So this is the shader for the background. What that has is it has a generated texture coordinate going up to one mapping node here. It has the normal texture coordinate going to another mapping node here. It has the window texture coordinate going to a third mapping node here. And these two mapping nodes just get added together and shoved into a noise texture, then mixed with some base color. Actually not sure why I do that there. Probably has, I guess we could play with it and see. Looks like it doesn't do a whole lot with the background unless I guess I make it brighter. Yeah, so let's leave that dark. I guess what it's doing is just slightly changing the background color, perhaps to give it a little bit more interest. Feel free to play around with that and its values. And the final thing is here, I'm taking the, I was going to be doing things with the hue, saturation, and value, but looks like eventually I tweaked it around enough and decided that just leaving it alone was the way to go. Then I'm going to take all this other section of a texture and divide it here, and finally I'm putting that into emission. So what that does is give us this whole thing here. And if I take, say, this divide and turn it down, you'll see you get less glow. The dividing is what gives that glow there. And I guess you can decide how much you want. If you want less glow, you can turn that down. And so what's going on here is there's a UV mapping. So you can, if you want to do stuff with the UV mapping, that's good. Pretty sure that this thing's UV mapping is pretty boring. Oh, interesting. So there is something going on here. I don't remember doing anything to set this UV mapping up, so hopefully there's nothing special about it, that it is just kind of what you would end up with if you subdivide a cube and round it out and add these little bevels on every edge. I suspect that's what all this stuff is around the edge here. So if for some reason you set yours up and it just isn't doing the same thing as what I'm doing and you're wanting something like that, feel free to ask me on my Discord and I'll give you the UV mapping there. Let's go back to a rendered view here. Oh, no, no, we want the sheeting tab. All right, there we go. So the reason why the reflection sort of moves while we're rotating and doesn't move entirely, but does move some, is because of this window texture coordinate going in here. What that does is keep the reflection kind of more or less pointed the direction that the camera is pointing. And it's not the camera, it's just any thing that causes you to see the scene from some particular direction. But that does include the camera. So if I go look at the camera view, this is a camera view here, you get the same sort of effect as if you do a 3D viewport. Let's see, go back to the shading tab here. And so, right, so if we just take those colors, divide them together, throw it into the emission here, that's what gives us that glow there. So the other things that's going on is I'm sending it into the base color, and what's coming here is the color attribute. Because I don't have anything here, just means whatever the current color attribute is that I have highlighted is what comes in here. And so that bit goes into the base color, goes into the specular, goes into the coat. And so each one, and this is a pretty typical thing for me when I'm setting up the principal BSDF in the most recent versions of Blender. I'm taking my vertex colors and putting them to the base color and the specular and the coat. And sometimes transmission, but oh no, I can't do it in transmission. Anyway, sometimes I'll put it in something else too. I think I'm forgetting where. Maybe sheen, right? Sometimes I'm putting it into sheen. That's another one. It's pretty common. Thin film I haven't seen, so this must be new in one of the newer versions of Blender. But anyway, it's very common for me to take my color attribute of my object and then feed it into those multiple places in the principal BSDF. This stuff here, this light path, transparent BSDF, disable shadow, I think this was a material option, a checkbox or something in the past, and I think this is something Blender added for me when I was upgrading to Blender 4.4. So I don't know what this is. This is not something I have done. It's something it looks like Blender did. So that's the entire material. I suppose there is just this one extra bit where I'm doing a gradient onto the roughness, and that is, I believe, in this particular case, what I'm doing is making the floor very reflective, and so you can see her and lights and other things reflected in the floor. But I didn't want the rest of the sphere to be reflective, and so that's why I have this linear gradient on here to stop the reflections from that. And then I also have a reflection plane here, which will then make the reflectivity a bit better than the default reflectivity. So you can kind of see the things going into the floor, but they don't reflect on the walls as much. So really, I suppose that's about all of what I've done for that background. And I really do enjoy it. It's a very simple thing, right? You just take a very large subdivided sphere and do some beveling and do some coloring and do a bit of a few things on the texturing, and then in the end it ends up actually being a bit of a complex thing. But it does give me a really nice look in all sorts of easy ways. I can just kind of be like, all right, I want I want to have maybe I want to have like a swooping effect here, and so I've keyed the empty in that way for this particular one. But maybe if I don't like that swooping, I want it in some other way, I can do that. Like here, maybe I want the floor very bright, I can put it like that. Or if I don't, I can do something else. So I'm pretty happy with that setup because I can get some interesting lights in the background to kind of complement her look as I'm creating various renders. I'm kind of a fan of curves, things like that. I'm actually I actually kind of like that better than what I had before. So I just now keyed the empty, so when I come back to this frame, that's what it looks like. I do forget which one of those textures is this sort of cross pattern on the floor, but it is one of them. I suppose it might be this one here. Yeah, that's that one. So because of the brightness contrast, I can have more or less of that on the floor. And divide is a fun thing. If you ever want to make something bright, you want to take a texture and basically add whiteness from it, you'll find yourself using this divide math node quite a lot. Well, that definitely makes it, you can definitely make it dark or very bright, depending on how you set that. I suppose I should show a little bit of how I painted the vertex colors on here. So let's just look at the smooth cube here. So all I did was, because the cube has a reasonably high resolution there, I can do lots of fun textures painting onto the cube. So here I've just kind of done some sort of clouds. It's dark up here at the top, so maybe like it's at night, but the clouds, there's some clouds all the way around the edge of it, perhaps lit by something because they're kind of yellow, and that gives you this this look here like you're sort of at night, but you've got something bright going on here. And then here I did the same sort of thing. I think I started with one set of colors all the way around, and then changed the brightness, contrast, and hue, and then did some extra painting to make it look good when I'm done. So there was sort of similarity between all the vertex paints. But yeah, you can just pick some different things. So okay, I can make one really dark here. And so then when I show the render, it's looking like that. In this case, I put a bit of a moon here with a cloud in front of it. So that's kind of fun, right? Because then if I want a very dark, sort of moody look, I can put it here and then see the moon in the background. This, I think, was the original color that I painted. Yeah, and so some just kind of pick different sort of characteristics I want here. I just made it very pink, and there's clouds in the pink sky, and that's about how that goes. All right, I think that'll do it for this video. Thanks for